You are listening to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where illumination and inspiration is but a click away. With so many genre topics for you on everything that you need to know in life. We celebrate and share the people who have taken the journey before you and who are now here to serve you with their wisdom and their knowledge. The next show coming up is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of our Global Veterans. I'm Sarah Troy, your host here at selfdiscoverymedia.com, and I have a wonderful host coming back, this time singly. She was with her husband, Tom Satterly. This time it is her turn. It's Jen, and Jen has done something else absolutely wonderful for the veteran community. It's about the wives, the women that get left behind. Everybody thinks that their lives are hunky-dory and it's only that their husbands are out there battling the forefront. But no, it isn't. They have their own battle. And she says, I will fight for you. I will defend us. I will protect me. I'm your battle buddy. And so the program that I'd love you to listen to on the other two shows. I did a show with Tom on his own, all about his veteran service, the obstacles and the challenges that he had in coming home. And then, of course, what happened with him and Jen starting this wonderful program for couples to reunite and get to know each other on who they are today. But Jen went even further, and she's actually now working with women, with Virago, women warriors, the women that are left behind. You know, they never know if they're going to get a knock on the door, you know, going to get that call that somebody isn't coming home. They are both husband and wife and mother, father, they're everything at home, and it can be extremely stressful for them. So while they're going through their own post-traumatic stress, it's who supports them. So let's find out about who is supporting them, Jen and her organization, along with the couples, which is wonderful, but this is her platform also here. And so needed. We forget about the families and the wives, don't we? And it's like, it's all about the soldiers and thank you for your service. But what about the service from the families that are sacrificing their loved ones being overseas on the battlefront, and they never know, you know, what tomorrow is going to bring. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back.
And we're happy to have you back, and it's really wonderful. And of course, I'm glad you're on the mentors with your All Secure Foundation, which is wonderful. But I really am happy that you have stretched out to embracing the wives. You are a wife. You know what you've gone through with Tom, and Tom's been extremely open with it of what he's gone through. Please listen to the first show and the second show, this third show. They're all lessons that you're sharing with people on how to navigate through this change that is happening. But I know why you brought it about, but how about you share a little bit about your own difficulties and, you know, what brought this about?
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm not a military wife, I'm a veteran wife.
Right.
And I make a distinction between that because I do have so much respect for the families who have to deal with their spouses that are deployed, and the complications and the drama and the trauma that comes along with not knowing if the person you love the most is coming home. I never had to go through that part of it. I did deploy stateside with special operations troops. And so I know a little bit about what it is to go away. Mm-hmm. And Tom did military contracting for years, so he would be gone for months at a time as well. So really, when I started working in special operations, I was working 99.9% with men. Mm-hmm. But what I was starting to hear was a lot of trauma on the home front, a lot of divorce, a lot of broken relationships, broken families. And I really knew that something had to be done and a voice needed to be lifted for the people who didn't have a voice and weren't being able to go out and kind of talk about it, because really military spouses are so they're kind of like their husbands in the sense of, or wives, We do have more females entering
Mm,
into combat, into special operations, but um, you know, they feel like they can't talk about it, or they need to
yeah.
be quiet about it and be respectful. But at the same time, they're hurting, they're isolated, they're alone. And so I really wanted to help create a voice.
And a voice that's so needed. I mean, very often they're living on base or just off base and they've got each other, but they're in each other's anxiety, aren't they? And it's,
For sure.
when they go to the grocery store or they're doing any of the other activities, people may know their spouse is in service. Oh, thank you for your spouse's service. But nobody says, how are you doing? How are you
Yes,
doing with
exactly.
this? We know what it's like as a parent when our kids aren't contactable.
Right.
They're 5 minutes late. you know
Right.
uh, to send your spouse off for months at an end and know that communication is going to be spasmodic, and you never know if it's going to be good news or
Yeah.
bad news, and um, that is bad enough. But as we talked about in our other shows, the person that went to the battlefront is not the same person that's going to come home. And most of them are still in the adrenaline. They're still in that fight and flight mode. And they don't know how to come back and take that breath and join society, because they're not the same person. They're still really treating life, as Tom did, as the battlefront. And you've already got a spouse at home who's got her own battlefront, who's managing everything. And those two clash, don't they? And that's very often where the friction comes about.
Oh, absolutely. Even when Tom would come home from, a couple months away doing special operations training, he would come in like he did post deployment, which is not really knowing his place. Life moves on. So
Mm-hmm.
if, one great example was, there's more communication now, but back when Tom was serving, they would go 4 6 months and that was it. I'll see you in a couple months. And I heard the story. It was great that one of the guys who went overseas came back and his wife became a real estate agent while he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So literally quit her job, went to school, became certified as a real estate agent in the time that he was gone. Life moves on, and it
Yes.
doesn't need to be that drastically, but you're not the same person you are, when someone leaves for a deployment. So the spouse changes as well.
Yeah.
But really, when you come home, you think everything's just like it was in July. And here it is, January. And, it's been a half of a school year for the kids and everything that goes along with that.
Roller
Um,
coaster that goes
of
along with that.
course, of
Yeah.
course. And so many of the spouses that I talk to really can't feel like they can't share a lot with their husbands when they're deployed. I don't want to put a burden on him. I don't
Right.
want him distracted. So maybe a kid at school is getting bullied. And that as a mom, that's a terrible
Yeah.
kind of thing to go through. And to go through that alone as a single parent, because you don't feel comfortable calling your husband in Afghanistan saying, hey, we've got this issue at school. So what happens is this constant building of, I've got it, I have to deal with it on my own. And so many incredibly strong women have no complaints on that. And I've talked to so many military wives that says it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But, and that's fine, and I can deal with that. But when truly what happens is when the people come back together, that's
Mm-hmm.
really the sticking point of, we've changed, we've evolved, we've grown, you've changed and you've grown, but we haven't seen each other in half a year.
Right.
And so now what do we do? How do
Who
we
are we
adjust?
now? Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's also for the spouse at home, this is their battlefront. They've got it covered.
Mhm.
And now they want to share with you what's been going on for the last 6 months. And but at the same time, the spouse that's come home from the battlefront doesn't want to hear everything, because wants to come home to apple pie.
Right.
And the kids, oh, daddy, and the wife, oh, sweetheart, all it is in the
Mm-hmm.
movies, right? And it
Right.
isn't that way, because in an awful lot, people are changing because of the experiences they're going through. And really, you have to look at each other and say, we need to find that love vibration again. I may love you, but who are you right now? And it has to be on both sides. Like, whoever comes home has got to be willing to what the spouse has gone through. I spared you while you were over there, but while you were gone.
Right. Let me pull out my list.
Yes. Because I think then also there's more respect for the spouse left behind of the battles that mostly she has gone through. I know,
Right.
well, I've been out there fighting on that battlefront, but my goodness, what you've had to go through here alone, is, I think there's a different kind of look and respect for your spouse. And then it's to find that back together when now we are in it together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, and I've talked to hundreds of wives across the board, including veteran wives like myself, who also feel a little bit lost in the community. Especially for me, I wasn't with Tom when he was active duty, so I didn't have a support sister group
Right.
of other military wives who were like, "Yep, that's normal," or "This is to be expected," or "I've got your back."
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the veteran wives I talk to are kind of in this world alone, and they don't know who to turn to. They don't have friends in the community. Perhaps their friends are very, very different. Mine were from the art community. So it was a total shakeup for both of us. And really, that isolation is so damaging.
Yes.
Whether you're a military or a veteran spouse, feeling like I can't share this with others. And I've talked to plenty of military spouses that feel that way as well. They maybe don't engage in the FRG or the family readiness group as that support system. They might not like some other women in the group, or they might find it's too gossipy, or whatever the situation may be. A lot of military wives isolate themselves as well, especially if there's trauma in the home, especially if there's something going on with any kind of level of domestic violence or emotional abuse. Just feeling really alone in that, and almost embarrassed of it.
Yeah. I think you've
So
hit on
that's a big
something there,
thing.
Embarrassment. I can't cope. What people are going to
Yes.
think about me? I'm afraid of the judgment. People are going to think
Yes.
I'm weak. And, we all have a tolerance level.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us can step into this zone when that happens. Like anytime my kids have had to have an operation, or had a fall, or had to do this, I'm completely cool, calm.
Yep.
As a cucumber, but then later on, shaking like a leaf, right? You go
Right.
into whatever mode you go into, but you have to address the whole experience later. And somebody needs to be there and say, wow, you were so strong at that time, I've got you. Or don't worry, I'm here for you as your strength right now. And we have to. I don't care whether it's veterans or not, or military spouses, everybody needs to have each other's back. We are not meant to go through this alone. We are meant
No.
to be a part of a village. And, I always say we need to find our instrument in life and then find our orchestra to play it in.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that all military wives are going to all see eye to eye and be kumbaya. But
Right.
you're going to find those like-minded or like-souled, like-heart people that you get on with and form your own orchestra. But it's very imperative that you do, isn't it? Because if you try and do this alone, the reconnection, not only with your spouse, but with life in general, is just going to be so much harder.
Oh, I completely agree. We are animals. We need our tribe. And, one thing that we had just talked about was, and we often talk about, is the wolf pack. And people in the military often kind of refer to themselves as the wolves. And yet, Tom and I were talking about this. If one of the members is ostracized from that wolf pack, they don't survive.
Right.
And in fact, I was telling Tom, he goes, I never thought of that. I said, they use isolation as a punishment.
Right.
If you're in prison, you go to solitary.
Yes.
It's literally a form of punishment, because we are meant to be connected. We are meant to feel like we belong to others. So that's a huge part of it.
And we also, just because you can, come on, snap out of it, doesn't mean everybody can.
No.
Everybody's
Agreed.
going to react to whatever's going on in their own way. And if somebody isn't doing it as fast as you want, it's get over it, allow people, again, it's, I always say, tap into your emotions, because your emotions are telling you exactly what you need to address at the time, but don't become emotional over it. So you've got to be careful that you don't go, oh, I'm getting attention now, I'm going to be dramatic and stick to that emotion. It's about recognizing the emotions and know that you need support through it right now. And don't judge somebody by what you would do. Help them in what they're needing to do.
That's a huge one, right? Because like you said, everyone's different. And I've heard a lot of critique and judgment from other wives, hey, my husband was gone 18 months, and I was able to do it without any help. And your husband's only deployed for 6 months and you're having, somebody else help you cut the grass or do things. Why can't you do things by yourself? And, there is a lot of judgment. There is a lot of, in any circle, in any community, including the art one that I, was most comfortable and kind of was raised up in my own. It is very easy to point fingers at other people, and it's very difficult to self-reflect, but it's so incredibly critical. And when you look at what are my needs, what do I need to ask for? And that's another thing I find so common in this community is I'm afraid to ask for what I need because he's already got so much on his plate. He's already dealing with so much. I can't add more to it. But what ends up happening there is a building resentment underneath the surface that just keeps boiling up of my needs aren't met, my needs aren't met. I'm only focusing on him and his needs and his trauma, what he needs to do for work. And I'm left out here in the dust alone. And that's not a relationship. That's not.
There's a yin and yang to everything. There's a balance. We have to have that balance. And, very often, and we know this is, you could be very, very strong through it. And then they come home and it's suddenly their home and you just turn into a puddle.
Right.
And he may come home and think you've been that all the time. And it's, you're home now. Oh, I can let it go.
Here's the kids, the dogs, the job. They're like, wait a minute, I wanted to dump it off because I just got back.
Right. And I think that's, probably a difficult thing. Whose needs do you tend to? And I think the recognition that both needs need to be tend to,
Absolutely.
and the give and the take, can we palm the kids off with someone and go and have that weekend? You do wonderful weekend retreats with them, but I know they're booked up for this year already, but it's taking the time just to be together, maybe in silence. Maybe in silence, and just get to know each other's vibe again, because we think all the time we need to talk about it, but sometimes it's just being in each other's presence and letting our vibrations reconnect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of my best conversations are, Tom, I have no words in between us, but it really is finding that right vocabulary, being able to communicate, getting comfortable in the uncomfortable, because it's not comfortable all the time to say, hey, you know what? I actually need this from you. That feels like confrontation to a lot of people, but actually nobody's a mind reader. And I think with all the people we've worked with, one of the most common things that comes out is this mind reader kind of vibe of like, well, you should know that I need this, or you should know that this is how this runs or that runs. How? Have you communicated? Have you talked about it? Have you written it down? Sometimes we even tell people, hey, if it's uncomfortable to start a dialogue or conversation, put it on paper.
Oh, I'm 100% with you there. Look, I'm sorry, I love you men, but you're not great listeners. And very often just read it, digest it, react to it, and come back and read it again, and then you're ready for conversation, right?
Absolutely.
So that reading of it is very, very important, I think. But I also think too, writing it down, and then looking at it and go, really, that one isn't so important. I can cross that off the list, that one sounds petty. I shouldn't do that. And then presenting it to them, not as a to-do list, as this is something that I am needing in order to feel whole again on my own side. And I think it's okay. And I think the veteran, the warrior returning should do the same. We've got to remember that on the battlefront they're in their instincts all the time. They're in their training all the time. And you're asking them to solve a problem that they don't have a manual for.
Right. And they don't like that. They've been told from day one, this is when you get up, this is when you work out, this is how you do your job, everything is very routine and regimented. When you come home, it's not, it's chaotic. There's
Yes.
one kid running in the door this way, another one's running that way, and you've got dogs, and maybe the spouse is saying, hey, you know what, I really need to catch up with work now because you're home and you can take care of the kids. And I've heard it so many times, wait a minute, I just got home, I need a couple of days to decompress. And that became a very great tool for Tom and I. Before he even came in the door, I would tell him, okay, listen, you've been gone, you haven't slept in 4 weeks, so for 2 days when you get home, the kids and I aren't your concern. The dogs, the house aren't your concern. I don't care if you sleep or watch reality TV for 2 days straight. Just take time to yourself to work your way back into it. Because
Land.
yes, land. Because for years it was in the door and bang, 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 bang. This is what's going on and this is what needs to get fixed. And, this is the situation that's going on at school or at work. And it's too much for anyone. And so our conversations led to, okay, before you get home, this is what we're doing. You're going to take your time. We're going to go on with life as normal. Oftentimes I would write emails, with things that were going on that I didn't quite want to tell him, added stress. And I would save them in a little folder. I wouldn't even send them, but sometimes it just felt good to talk to him, even though he wasn't there. And you're right. Sometimes I'm like, I thought that was a bigger problem that needed to be addressed. And now that I've gotten it out, now that I've written it down, I've kind of gotten that off my chest now and I'm okay to move on.
Yeah. But I think also is preparation. Sorry, folks, if I'm looking very yellow here. I don't know. My lighting today, I look very jaundicey. We're very dull outside and doesn't matter what lighting I've got here. But, anyway, I think also preparation in there are some changes here when you get home, such and such, such and such, such and such. So they don't come home and go, what the heck? It's like, what? They're doing this, that one's driving, and, you got a real estate license, prepare them so they don't come in, because what they want to do is come home to familiarity.
Yeah.
And if so much has changed, it's like, whose house am I in?
Yep.
Right. So I think it's really, really important that we actually do prepare them, to a point of what changes have happened and present it in a way, oh, we're so excited to share this journey with you. This is what's happened and he can't wait to tell you about it. And so when they do come home, they don't feel, God, I've gone away and I've come home to a stranger or a strange house or anything else, and in a lot of ways, and I might get feedback on this, but in a lot of ways, it's like kind of dementia, people coming home and it's like this, I'm remembering something from the past, but it's not the reality of my now. And you've got to understand that this is, time has gone by, people have gone by, and it's like, you're expecting everything to be as when you left. It's not going to happen that way. So I think preparing as much as you can is good so that they do come home, they know Johnny's grown 6 feet.
Yeah, always keeping in contact, as much communication as possible. In fact, on our first retreat, one of the guys who was deploying a lot was actually getting ready to deploy again. And the conversation that they had in front of the group was, she says, you've checked out already. You're not even leaving for 3 weeks, but you're already gone.
Right.
And I don't know how to cope with that. I'm trying to grab every bit of you that I can, because I know you're going to be gone for a long time. So, I need to snuggle with you. I need to have a date night. I need to see you with the girls and interacting with them, because they're going to miss you for months. And I'm the one who's tucking them in at night when they cry that they miss you.
Yeah.
And so her needs, and I said, well, okay, he's deployed for the last 15 years. So, how have you dealt with this in the past? And they hadn't.
Right.
There was no conversations. It was, and he didn't even know. He said, well, true, I'm going already through my checklist of everything I have to do. And it is, I am 100% work focused because I have to be.
Yeah.
And so really what they decided and talked about, he said, you don't have to, she's like, well, I try to give you your space. And I try not to encroach upon you. He's like, oh, well, I don't mind that. You don't ask for that, so so much of this miscommunication can
Yeah.
be dealt with on coming up with rituals. How do we say hello? How do we say goodbye? What things do we do? Maybe it's every time before a deployment, you take a mini trip, just the
Yeah.
two of you, just 2 nights away, even if it's in your hometown.
Right.
And when you get home, what does that ritual look like when you come home too? It's so incredibly important.
Yeah. Having the expectations, right?
Mhm.
You know what's expected from each other. And you know that that is on your to-do list, right?
Yes.
It's just as important as preparing to go is the preparing to leave.
Yes.
And, we've also got to remember that, as you said, the spouse left behind is dealing with the crying kids.
Yeah.
Mommy or daddy is gone again. And a month or a week is a long time for a child.
For
Months and months
sure.
is a hell of a long time for a child. And it's like if an animal has been lost and then reunited, they've got to resense you again,
Hmm.
resmell you again, and like, is this just a memory I'm looking at? Are you my master from before? And once they get it, then they're all over you, right? But it's
Right.
allowing that time, because each time, mostly when dad comes home, he's kind of a different guy again, and he's still in that mode, and the kid is all excited, etc. But everybody needs that time to reconnect. And I think it's not just the time with the spouse. I think that the father or the mother who's ever away needs to say, okay, each individual child, I'm having time alone with them. This is their day,
Yes.
this is their moment, doing what they want to do and reconnecting with them. I think one of the biggest false misconceptions is that you're just falling back into things as they used to be. And that, I think, is the biggest detriment.
I agree. Somebody had just said something to Tom, and he brought it back up to me a few days ago, and I thought that's kind of brilliant. Pretend like you're the favorite uncle for a week. You don't need to
Yeah,
step in as dad.
right.
You don't
Yeah,
need to, because that is so much of the mentality is fix it, control it. And so what we hear most often, even in my own household, was I'm back to disciplinarian, I'm back to
yes.
Mr. Fix It, I'm back to, and it's like, no, go and get on the floor and play with the kids.
Hmm.
Go and spoil them and take them for ice cream for dinner. Be the favorite uncle instead of trying to step right back in as dad, and take that pressure off yourself just for a week, just for a couple of days,
Yeah,
even.
yeah.
Just enjoy each other, and then start trying to work slowly back into um, the responsibilities.
I mean, this is where you get a kid saying, you've been gone. Why should I
Right.
listen to you? Especially when you start getting into the teenagers who now, of
Fun.
course, know everything or are angry at everything, and are going
Yes.
to, all my gray hairs with my children's name on it. They're going to run you through the ringer. And, one has to understand that when you're coming back, especially if you do have teen kids, that they have pushed every button they can. And sometimes buttons that you didn't even know you had, because you're on your own and they know dad's not there to back you up,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So it's not about wait till your dad gets home and I'm going to tell him and he's going to come in with the discipline, right? It's got to
Yeah.
be reconnect, and go, by the way, that wasn't kosher that you did there, right? That's
Yes.
taking advantage, and that was not nice on your mom, but don't come at them with that, because you've got to rebuild that trust again, haven't you?
Yeah, you do every single time. And I think that is so it just puts everyone in the family on eggshells. I would say walking around minefields, because
Yeah.
you don't quite know. And yeah, dad or mom is going to be really tired on both sides, but
Yep.
especially coming back, post deployment. Back in the old days, they talked about people would take a ship home, and they would
Yes.
have this time to decompress and kind of get their head together. Now you're in Afghanistan and you're home in 18 hours,
Hmm.
and there's no separation, there's no decompression. And, most of the times people are coming back, and luckily there hasn't been a loss of life or something like that, but it's still, you're used to a different time zone, you're used to
Yeah.
different foods, you're used to a different routine and system. And the system at home is completely different and
Oh,
foreign.
180 completely. But
Yes.
the other thing too is that, especially if they're going to be redeployed again,
Yes.
sometimes they don't want to decompress so much. They don't want to get happy and home
Mm-mm.
on the front because they don't want to go through the pain of leaving again. So there's almost something there that they're not willing to switch off and
Yeah.
be the husband or the dad because they know it's going to be so much harder when they leave. But then that's not really fair to the family who need dad. They don't need the
Right.
soldier.
We have all these protective measures, because we're built for safety and security.
Mm,
And however we as humans will try to find that safety and security, will do. And so you're right. When people come home, it might be a great or turbulent couple
yes.
weeks. And then right away, most often I hear it's about week 3 or 4 when he's ready to go back. And
Yeah.
people just can't get their head around that. But there's stability, there's routine, they feel needed. When they say jump, somebody jumps. At home, it's jumping, and everyone's looking around like, well, maybe not. And I've got homework, or I'm going to, go clean up the yard. I'm going out with friends. And, really to a mind who's trained for war, that's chaos. And
Yeah.
chaos needs to be controlled. And so all of these tools of war are brought into the home, like anger, aggression, violence, perfection-driven aggression is a big one. Why is the house not perfectly clean, or why are the shoes not in order? Because the brain is constantly searching for order.
Yeah.
And so, on top of everything of what distance creates is the chaos of war coming into the home. And, it's stressful for everyone.
And of course, whoever's at home is just, managing to
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep things in any resemblance of order. And, the thing is, as a parent, as a mother especially, you're always in chaos. And all you're trying to
Right.
do is put something in order, but as you put that in order, something over there is going chaotic. You cannot run a home regimentally. It doesn't allow for creativity. It doesn't allow for self-expression or self-exploration. If a family love is allowing people to be chaotic and find their own management of their own equilibrium, and really it's just allowing that chaos not to go so far afield that it becomes dysfunctional, but the chaos managed in a way that allows it constantly to be allowing things to grow, which is a completely opposite thing.
It
Completely
really
opposite.
is.
Yeah, chalk and cheese, totally. So yes, someone to come home, yes sir, hi dad. It
Mm-hmm.
ain't going to
Ain't
happen.
happening.
Yeah. So I think maybe what is not happening is the training of the
Mm-hmm.
soldiers coming home of what to expect, the reality, right? And that is
Right.
something that needs to go out there. But also on the other side, to also understand, look, if dad says straighten your shoes and do that, just do it for him because that's what he needs in order
Yes.
to kind of his own equilibrium. So it's give and take on both sides. But I think a good thing to have is a trigger word of you've gone too far, let's back off.
Yep, we have that.
All right.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's really imperative
Mm-hmm.
in this culture, is to have something that doesn't feel accusatory. Obviously, you don't want to say you're being an XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
All that's going to do is set him off, and really great points in two different areas.
Yeah.
One is the give and take and the balance. And I talked to so many wives that are like, he's hyper vigilant. The house has to be in perfect order. And I said, and they get it out, and I'm messy and it doesn't bother me, or hey, that's life and that's the kids. And I said, where can you come in the fold?
Right.
Where can you compromise? And I know you've already given so much of yourself, but if for you, if it's keeping the foyer where it looks really clean and nice, so at least the first impression is
Yeah.
okay, I can breathe. Or maybe your bedroom is a no kid zone, and that's an area just for the two of you, and that's an area where it can be a sanctuary,
Yeah.
where it's kept clean and tight and orderly. But at the same time, it's creating that dialogue of, so Tom's call sign is crawler. And it took years for us to develop this, but really, when he becomes very militant, and he's very much in that militant mindset, he's crawler. He goes right back to his call sign. And so there's times where I can tell he's agitated, or I'm going to go upstairs and talk to the kids and they need to clean their room. And, I could tell, I'm like, oh boy, here comes the marching orders.
Mm.
And I'll say, all right, go upstairs, talk to the kids, but I need you to go upstairs with Tom. And Crawler doesn't belong upstairs in the bedroom talking to the kids about this. Or, he might be hyper vigilant about cleaning or doing something. And I'll say, all right, but why don't we have Tom do that and not Crawler?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not your soldier. And,
Right.
When I say that to a lot of the wives, they all laugh and they're like, yes, like I've said that a million times. I'm not your soldier. I'm not your private, because it's so easy to fall back into
Right.
that kind of language and that kind of routine that most of the times they don't even know they're doing it. But when you have that word, or you have that safety and say, hey, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not trying to stir the pot here, but you're in the mode that doesn't belong in the home, which is the war mode. I get it.
Yeah. And you don't know when that's going to come up, because, is it a past memory? Is it a past feeling? Is it something they're dealing with right now? Flashbacks or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we have to respect that too. But I think, having a word that is completely and utterly bizarre, that anybody can say when they feel, I'm feeling too much,
Yes.
or this is going too much, Rumpelstiltskin, supercalifragilistic,
Yes.
rhubarb, a word that is completely out of realm of what you would normally use. And it can be a trigger word. Go, oh, okay, all right, let's everybody take a breath. Everybody take a breath. Okay, why did you say that? Well, you were making me feel.
Yes.
Okay, sorry to make you feel that way. And then that awareness starts triggering into the brain and starts reprogramming. But I think it's important to have that, because it's like, oh, you're overstepping the line.
Right? Oh yeah, and it could be a really creative. We actually do this exercise in our retreats with a couple, is to come up with your own language, signs, symbols, words, in order to kind of get you out of that cycle, that negative cycle that just keeps repeating and keeps showing up. And how do you press pause on that to get to the root of the problem versus fighting about the fighting?
Yeah.
And so, one couple are really into sports, and they're into sports together. So they have little symbols like timeout, or things that they can do. They have smaller children, or we need to go talk, and they have all their little hand symbols for able to, yes, and really it's kind of cute where, people go around the room and kind of share, okay, we could try that. Maybe what we'll do is, another couple love the outdoors, and they're like, do we need to stoke the fire, or do we need to put out the fire?
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
For something romantic, I
we
think
don't want
to
a
just go in the
fire.
tent.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's go in the tent and just put this to rest for now.
And the thing is, I think if a warrior knows, hey, this is going to be rapid fire in a moment,
right?
And we step into that mode, that the last thing you want is any rapid fire here, or any grenade going off. Is
sure.
That word, that action, it's time for the take 5.
Yes.
Right. It's time for the deep breath. Everybody just go somewhere and take a breath, and then kind of come back. Don't ignore the problem, because it will only come back up again, but come back with level heads.
Absolutely. You can save so much trouble in your, yes, because we all say things when we're angry that we don't really mean. And just allowing that space, we call it a 5-minute break. And sometimes our 5-minute breaks stretch into 30 minutes, or, this weekend it was 3 hours where, he wanted to go to the park, and, again, it was a Saturday cleaning day, and there was, kids going this way and that way. And, one of the teenagers doesn't want to help out. Another one wants to head off with friends, and no, we're cleaning today. And I said, all right. We're all getting spun up. Let's just take a break. Cause we started fighting about surface issues or fighting about the fight. And the best thing to do sometimes for us is just to get space, 5 minutes, 3 hours, whatever it is. We came back together that evening. Okay, this is what I was thinking, this is what I was feeling, and able to have that conversation with a clear, calm head. Tough words or hard words aren't being thrown about, and that you're apologizing for later, so you could save a lot of grief allowing for that space.
It's a huge thing, is that if you can't say something nice, shut up. You know,
Yes.
and it's very, very important that we practice that in everything in life, because it's, oh, you know, and out comes the finger pointing and, you know, and you can't take
Yes.
that back. You know, it's
No,
sticks and stones, but words will never help me. I'm sorry, words hurt.
they
You
do.
know, and, you know, when somebody says something, when they're mad, you kind of think, well, that's their truth coming out. And if you don't want that to be your truth, then suck it up, you know,
Yes.
and be careful, because it's very hard to fix something that you've said that's derogatory or mean or nasty. It's
Yeah.
so hard to come back from that. So it is really, if you can't say anything nice in this situation, just shut the mouth, go for a walk. You know,
Yes, whatever you need to do,
yeah, don't do
just
the
zip
laundry.
it.
Beat up
Yes.
on the laundry.
Yes. We
Vacuum
have
the
a
house.
yes, we have a couple that has a punching bag in their basement.
Hmm.
And you know, for a lot of these guys, they have so much cortisol and testosterone
Yes.
and adrenal fatigue that physical exertion actually is really beneficial.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he gets mad or he gets worked up and starts to get to that place. He says, I'm going to go downstairs. And she knows, okay. Again, he might go down and hit the bag for 5 minutes. He might go downstairs and work out for an hour.
Hmm.
But it's a great way to expel some of that adrenaline, especially as it builds up. And so, you know, a lot of the guys are like, I don't know, so I'm like, go for a run, go for a walk, go to the gym, you know, work out, do something where you're feeling physical,
Yeah.
clear your head. It's such a great tool to use.
And if, you know, if the wife says, you know what, I need to go for a walk
Mhm.
and I'm leaving you with the kids, you know,
Yes,
she went for a walk, she walked out on the argument, you know, no, she's taking her 5. You
yes,
take your 5 your way, let her take her 5 that way, she'll come back with a clearer
absolutely.
head, and then it'll be, okay, what's for dinner? You know, what should we
Yes,
make, you know? And that's the way we process it. Sometimes we just go out and we can mutter under our breath, oh, wait a minute, as we're going, and whew, it's spent. And that's,
right.
I think, probably a lot of times difference between men and women in a lot of things. We spend it, but we haven't got time to dwell on it, because, you know, now dinner's come up, or this has come up, or so
Right.
Joey's got to go to gymnastics, or this or that, and you haven't got time to ferment in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's choosing, you know, if something keeps coming up over and over again, you put a pin in it, and that's when you go and maybe write about it. I have noticed this has come up a great deal. Hand them the note and say, would you like to have your observation, and then we'll talk about it. All right.
I love it. I love it. I would even tell Tom, so I'd write it down in an email,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we were distance, but even when we're at home, because sometimes I feel like I need to collect my thoughts
Yeah.
before I start opening my mouth as well. And
Yeah.
really, what am I trying to say? And how can I say it where I'm not bringing up something from 3 months ago or 3 years
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah.
I don't need to win the argument, right? And
That's
so much
important.
of
You
so
don't need to win
much,
it. If you're
yeah.
winning, somebody else is losing, and that's not what you want.
No, and every time you know, one of the things that's really helped us is the saying, when one of us tries to win, the relationship loses.
Yes.
And so, you know, really, if I'm trying to get my thoughts together and I'm protecting us, the us of the relationship, I can still put Jen's needs out there. I could still address it in a way that Tom can receive it without pointing fingers or
Yeah.
without low blows or without, but you did this before.
Mm.
What am I trying to say? What do I need to get off the chest? And writing it down is a beautiful way.
Yeah.
I edit all the time. I might have 4 versions before I send it to him.
And that's important to do, you know. We don't want hate mail, but, you know,
No.
the thing is, if something is constantly being repeated, it clearly is something that needs to be addressed. And if you don't address
Yes.
it, it's just going to gather roots and keep growing. And but you've got to sometimes look at it, but you said that in that context, you said that again, but in this context, I'm confused, because what are you really
Yes.
trying to say? You know, and I think presenting it that way, there's something you need to say, ba 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 ba, would you please digest this, and then let's have a chat. And, you know, maybe they
Absolutely.
want to write back to you instead of talking to you, because, you know, guys aren't generally the writers. You know, or
Right.
maybe it's audio, you know, on the phone and
Mm-hmm.
send you an audio. It doesn't matter how the communication is going, as long as the communication is going
Agree.
harmoniously between each other.
Whatever system works for you.
Yeah. And, you know, I know everybody thinks like, well, when do you get back to normal? You know, I understand this in
Mm.
the beginning, but when do you get back to normal? I think what you have to understand, you have more difficulties when it is, a veteran or a warrior coming home. Especially if they're being redeployed all the time. You have more difficulties in that adjustment because you're constantly in and out of that, or you're in and out of their memories if they're at home
Yeah.
for, but we also have to understand that regular marriages have these issues too. Maybe not the same ones, maybe not the post-traumatic stress, or maybe not the warrior versus, but everybody has issues. Maybe they've got issues at work, they've got family issues, they've got this and that. And the same principles that you're talking about here are the same principles we need to bring into any marriage,
Any
any
marriage.
home front.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I have a really good friend of mine whose husband has PTS, and it's from childhood abuse and
Mm-hmm.
trauma, and also being involved in a really horrific car accident where other people had died, and, he had watched a little girl die. And so, most of what he brings into the house is very similar to what Tom brings into the house. The PTS symptoms are the same. How he got it was entirely different.
Exactly.
But, I'm divorced. I was married to an artist. Things fall apart and people grow apart, no matter what world you're coming from.
Right.
For sure.
And we've also got to remember the two people that fell in love are not the same people at all.
Mm-hmm.
5 years, 10 years down the road, no matter what the career choices are. And that there are times that one is going to grow while the other one nurtures and waters that. And then there's the time for this one to grow and vice versa. It's the constant yin yang, the constant seesaw. What we don't want to see is the extremes, up and down, high. We want to see that seesaw constant in a nice even movement. And there are times that it is the coming together in order to follow a kind of collective dream. But who you are when you get married, so many people get married not knowing who they are.
True.
And our self-discovery is, this is my instrument. Oops, losing my headphones. This is my instrument that I'm bringing to this orchestra of a marriage. Right. And we're going to create other little orchestras and players in there, but we are always in discovery of ourselves, evolving, growing. And sometimes you simply just outgrow your partner because your journeys have taken you on such different ways. That doesn't mean that you can't be amenable, kind, or friendly to each other. And especially if there's kids involved. And sometimes it's just to realize, who you are now, who I am now, we're just not compatible on that level. Let's find a different platform of friendship, but as spouses, we can't make it.
Absolutely. My ex-husband, Mark, and I we actually had a great marriage. We were best friends, but we definitely grew into different people and different roles. I met him when I was in college, and we have a lot of respect for each other, a lot of love. I talk about with my our two children that we still are a family, and we always will be a family.
Yeah.
We just look a little different now, in different places, but they know that I respect their father and then he's a friend, and that's always been very important to me for our kids, is to
hugely important. The moment you get into he said, she said, and it was my kids that actually said to me, time for a divorce, Mum. This is not happening, oh, I'm waiting for you guys to grow. No, we can survive, and just a year ago, my ex and myself walked my daughter down the aisle, and we see each other at various functions, and we've been apart now virtually as long as we were together, and two totally different people on totally different worlds. But that doesn't mean, thank you for the gift of 3 children.
Yes.
Right. And the relationship they have with their father is one they've formed for themselves. It's not just dad. It's their father and their particular relationships they've had with them. But they don't, if your relationship, if it just simply the person that's come back, you can't live with them anymore, and vice versa, please do it in a amenable and friendly way, because nobody needs the bashing, the nasty, the trauma is already there. And the trauma is probably what's already caused the breakup.
Yes.
Don't add more trauma to it, please.
Oh yeah. One thing that is so hurtful is when one parent talks bad about the other parent, and they're putting them down, because the child doesn't distinguish And really what they're doing is they feel like that's an attack on them. Oh, your father, so this. Well, that's my father's part of me. So then
Right.
that's part of me.
Yeah.
People don't really realize that when you're talking bad about your ex in front of your child or to your child, they take that personally on as their own hurt and their own pain. And
Yeah.
we don't want that for
And
our
they feel
children.
guilty.
Right.
Oh, you're breaking up because of me, because I was naughty. I
Right.
was difficult. And it's like, no, if that's what you've come to, you both sit down and say, first and foremost, we love you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing you've
Absolutely.
done wrong. I love your mom. I love your dad. But we have just come to the realization that we no longer are good for each other under the same roof.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish everybody could do it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I mean, it takes time sometimes. Sometimes you have to
Mm-hmm.
plant the seeds and water them so until that thinking comes around. But
Right.
if you do it, I remember actually going to a divorce workshop, and the lawyer said, please don't hire me. The moment you hire me, it's all about how much money they can make, and they're going to make sure you hate each other. Right?
Mm.
So please know the rights and do things immediately, and then all the law comes in is to solidify it. And that's accountability. If you have children, if you did marry somebody, it doesn't matter who you are now, respect, right?
Yes,
This is
respect.
please, this is a closure that you're going to have. Nobody needs to be dragged through the mud. Nobody needs to be
Mm.
traumatized from this, because that just means there's people now with their own post-traumatic stress on their own battlefronts,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So,
absolutely. That.
sometimes it's not about coming together.
Mhm.
If you just find that the language isn't there, I have to say every veteran that I've interviewed has been divorced,
Yeah, it's very common. Four
right?
times more common.
Yes,
Yes, a
exactly.
lot more common.
And that is because the people who they used to be could never reconnect, or they couldn't
Yes.
relate on the people who they are now, right? You're not
Yeah.
going to get back who was there before.
No,
Can you love the person that's in front of you now?
that's
And
a
that's
great
not always going to
question.
work, right? And
It's a great
that's
question.
the self-discovery, is give each other time to learn about each other now. And if 6 months, a year down the road, you find no, then it's just friendly goodbye, right? But
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
you've got to be willing to do the work on both sides. And that's what you
Yes.
do with your people. So what kind of program do you put them through? What can they expect from Virago?
So we have a couple different platforms, and we're growing Virago this year. I'm really excited about it. So we're going to be bringing seminars to different bases, and they're full days, and we'll have guest speakers talking about it, many different things. And really, this is a collection of talking to hundreds of wives over the years, and really kind of hearing, what pieces are you missing?
Mm-hmm.
What information? How can we support you? And so much of it is to create that tribe mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be, and what I love about the internet, what I love about social media, is someone who feels really alone. Maybe they're at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and they don't really feel like they've connected with many people. They could still talk to somebody at Fort Bragg, or they
Mm-hmm.
still can talk to somebody, at Fort Benning, and have that relationship, because maybe their interests really aren't
Yeah,
very,
in sync.
in sync with the people
Yeah.
around them, and that's okay. And so really we want to create this idea that you're not alone. There
Mm-hmm.
are other people like you out there. You might have to go find and search your tribe a little bit, but let us help answer some of the questions you might be struggling with.
Yeah.
So we will have these full day seminars. We have our first one coming up in May at Fort Bragg. But additionally, what we do is workshop retreats. We have 7 of them this year. And like you said, actually, we've had 2 couples who have divorced after them. And it's been very helpful for them, because they were so angry when they
Right.
came to our workshop retreats. Just, we're going to be done, we're going to be over. Like an underlining hatred. And
Right.
really, it's okay, you guys aren't, you're done. You're ready to move on with your lives. Let's find a language. Let's find a communication that works for you, so that you're going to be hurt. We get that. But let's just try to minimize it. Let's try to minimize the pain. But for the most part, we have people leave in tears, and they're hearing what they generally don't get to hear from the military. They're not, hearing you're supported, and
Mm.
it's okay to feel alone. It's okay to cry in the shower, when you don't know, you haven't heard from your husband in a while, you don't know where he's at. We talk to the spouses too. Listen, you've got to communicate with her, right? You've got to talk about it. So really what we've noticed is we've isolated the groups before. We just spoke to 450 Green Berets on Monday, talked to the guys alone with their command, and we had a group of women in the morning, spouses. And that was great. And we're going to continue to do that work. But really what we heard was we want to come together in these meetings too, because I want to hear what you're telling the guys, and the guys are like, I want to hear what you're telling the wife. And really, it's finding that balance in life, supporting and respecting each other. And you hit the nail on the head with respect, because we love all kinds of people. But if we don't respect ourselves, love ourselves, we can't give that to anybody else. So we work
It's not for
on
someone to
many
fix you,
things.
right? It's not about
Right.
fixing yourself. It's about addressing the issue that's dividing you or making you feel so alone.
For
And
sure.
I think one of the biggest problems we have as society today, which we've always had, is the pointing of the finger, the judgment. And we're so scared of somebody judging us. We're weak, we're this, we're that,
Yes.
we don't count, and that is a whole load of balderdash.
Yes.
And we have no idea our strength and our courage until we're willing to walk through the fire, right? And it's amazing that, that people say to me, why do you do veteran shows? Because, I'm not a pro-war person at all. I always think there's other solutions. I do it because I have such respect for the veterans who are now there for each other, because the
Yeah.
governments have let them down. It's all very well they come back a hero, but if they come back with any problems, we don't want to know. and
Right.
and how the veterans have seen the issue and go, you know what, nobody's going to help, let's us do it, right? Let us
Oh
do it,
yeah.
let us find the solution, let us be that support for each other. And it's such a wonderful example to everyone else that when there is a problem, stop waiting for someone else to fix it. Get together with your tribe, your band, a group of misfits, and find a solution together. And then spread
Absolutely.
that out, that orchestra going out. And that's the important thing. That's what I respect so much about the veterans that I do and the veteran wives that I interview, because the fact that you are looking at, yes, we know what the problem is. How do we resolve it? Right? How do we make this
Absolutely.
that this is just a process of life? And how do we have the skills and the tools and the mindset to deal with it?
You're exactly right. And really what we do as an organization is help create that awareness and education. We're
Yeah.
not going to save a marriage in 4 days. We're
No.
not going to, help a woman in one day go, oh, hey, I'm walking out of here and I feel, I hope she feels empowered,
Mm-hmm.
but empowered to take the steps herself,
Yes.
do the healing, to put in the work. I tell people all the time, there's an amazing little thing called Google. That's what I did, because people are like, how did you get started? I'm like, I sat at my computer all the time looking for modes of healing for Tom,
Mm.
looking for what's going on with this, Google, and it's not that I take everything that I read on the internet to heart, but it's certainly introduced me to other organizations,
Yes.
other people, other tribes, people who are saying this worked, this didn't. You have to put in the work. And so really when we're educating and we're getting people in front of people, we're saying, listen, you've got to put in the work. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family, but especially to yourself,
Yeah.
to find what works for you, because what works for you and what works for me might be two entirely different things, or what's helped Tom and I and another couple can be an entirely different thing. That's why I love this community of sharing where, hey, this is some things that I've done. Here are some things that Tom and I have done. Here's some things that Tom has done. And people go, okay, great, I'm willing to give that a try. And that's the most important thing, is putting one little baby foot in front of the other and just taking that step, however small, because it is a step.
Changing a perspective, just
Yes.
shifting it, a willingness to look at something different. Yeah,
Yes.
the reason I do these shows here in Self Discovery Media, I do them because what you've shared with us here today, it's going to be an aha moment for someone, whether it's somebody, a veteran's wife or not, or
Sure.
somebody just going through a relationship, realizing, maybe that what happened to them back then is post-traumatic stress and we don't know it, and this is why there is this conflict. The whole thing about it is sharing the wisdom.
Yes.
Sharing the knowledge that's being learned. The best teachers are those that have gone through it themselves. They're the
True.
best teachers. And when we hear, how did you get through it? This is what I did. This mindset, I use this tool, this, that. What it does is shows people that if you're willing to explore and participate in your own healing, right, you can try your skill, your tool, and apply it. And you go, but you know what? This works better for me. That doesn't matter. It's all
Right.
about willing to participate and try. And if you're inspired by someone like you, then you're invited to start participating in your own life and looking for the things that are going to heal you. And this,
Yes.
my entire network is of people who have shared their healing because of what they've gone through. And we've got to
Right.
understand we're incredibly strong and courageous. We're incredibly versatile, adoptive, and adaptive. It's the willingness that we have to have, the choosing of the positive living that we need to have. And that's where it starts. Don't get stuck in the pain and the misery. Go, well, there has to be
Yes.
something else. And don't just write somebody off because it's difficult, right?
That's a good one. Because it's not easy.
No.
It's not easy. And nobody ever said it would be. Just, you have to decide if it's worth it. And nobody can decide that for you either.
And you have no idea if the reason you were put together and to go through this strife separately is the coming back together, and how together, like you two, you and Tom, have come together to form this organization, this All
Right.
Secure Foundation, that had you not gone through this, you wouldn't be doing this and helping other people. Sometimes
Absolutely.
those struggles, we go through, the challenges we go through, not just a discovery in our own strength and our courageous, but our meaningful purpose and how it serves others. And only the willingness to go through will you actually understand what the service is at the end of it.
Beautiful. Very true. And
So,
and that's what we hope we can do is,
right?
and some people have asked us, is it really difficult to share the struggles and to share some of the stories, that Tom and I have shared? And of course it is. And, of course we worry about judgment or all the normal human emotions that every single person has. It's just, what do you do with it? What are you deciding to do with your
Yeah.
struggles?
Yeah.
And for us, it was, let's share them. Let's
Right.
get them out there, because if we were hurting and we were going through this, we know we're not the only ones out there.
Right.
You
And
know.
what can you do all together as a beautiful orchestra, right?
Right.
And we've also
Yes.
got to know that ignorance very often is arrogance,
Mm-hmm.
because it believes
For
that you know it
sure.
all. If you go,
Yes.
I am ignorant in this situation, there is no flaw in that. There's an honesty to say, I don't know what to do, but I'm willing
Mm-hmm.
to seek, listen, and learn on what can
Yes.
be done, right?
Oh, for sure. We can't be masters in every
No,
single arena. We're not meant to be.
no.
And we're meant to fill in each other's blanks. And so I think that's really beautiful about relationships with children and parents and spouses and friends, is that we fill each other's gaps in.
Yes. So how do people share with you maybe their stories,
I
or
would love to hear that.
and that
Yes.
they've maybe got some tidbits that they've learned along the way that can help your community? How do people reach out to you? I know, as you said before, that you're full this year, which just means you're going to have to do more of them, or
Yes.
more seminars and things, maybe some online ones, which I think you're looking at,
Yes.
so it can reach out to everyone. But how do people find you to know more?
So there's a couple different ways. allsecurefoundation.org is our website. There's a contact form. It actually goes directly to me. So people who write into the website, I get all of those emails and we respond to every single one of them. So if there is a story, if there is a treatment option, we get them all the time. Hey, I have an equine therapy up in New Hampshire, or hey, I've got a scuba diving school that, does post-traumatic stress down in Key West. I'd love to hear about it.
Yes.
We're expanding our resource list. That's really important part for me, just in my own isolation and not knowing where to turn.
Right.
I know there's Google, but I'm also going to make it easier for you. You can come to our site. By May, we will have an entirely new website with tons of resources, more ways for people to communicate with each other directly online. But we're also on social media and Facebook, Instagram at All Secure Foundation, and for Virago, the same. There's actually a Virago link right at All Secure Foundation and .org. So people can reach me directly through there or social media platforms as well. And you're right, we will have some online courses. We can't get to everybody one-on-one, so
No, no.
we need to do
And the
bigger
thing is, it's
reach.
everything you've learned in those groups you now can bring to another.
Yes,
And of course, there's wonderful things called summits and webinars that having
yes.
sharing the people there, which is wonderful. And you are a mentor here with us on my up and coming site, Discovering Communities, because the Discovering Communities is discovering communities like yourselves that are in service of others that are going through this. I'm very happy to have you as a mentor.
Thank you.
So April 4th, which is my 8th anniversary of hosting.
Wow.
DiscoveringCommunities.org will be out there and people will be able to find you on the mentors there as well.
Great.
Right now, Self-Discovery Media will also lead them to everything. And I really want people to go back and listen to the other shows because it doesn't matter which sequence, but obviously you listen to Tom first. He's laid the platform of exactly the struggles that he had in coming home. And then the two of you came on and shared the struggles that you had, but what doors it opened. And of course, now today you shared what the women go through and how important it is that seesaw does not go high and extreme, and that you
Yes.
learn to find a language where you can communicate, but most of all, respect her. This is her battlefront, right?
Yes.
And you're coming
Yes.
home to that. It's her rules and regulations and not yours. And you can find a nice cohesive one in the center that becomes the two of yours. Especially if you're going to be deployed again. She doesn't want to come in and completely upset the system, right?
Right.
Because that's going to be what she's going to be running when you're gone again. And if you are a veteran, then of course you're coming home with all of the baggage of what you've been through. And yes, you're going to be imposing it now and again, and it's for them to know how much they can take and how much when they need to go seek help elsewhere because it's beyond their
Absolutely.
help. So it's mindfulness, it's heartfulness, it's soulfulness, isn't it? And
Yes.
it's being participant in your own life, because that's the only way that you're actually going to be able to come together.
Beautiful. I'm very excited that you've had us on and had me on again today. And like you said, it really is open to anyone who's
Yeah.
curious or anyone who wants to grow or learn. We have a lot of non-military people who come to the site, a ton of law enforcement and
Yes.
firefighters and, that community. But, CEOs have a whole lot of stress too. So,
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
somebody made some comment that only soldiers get post-traumatic stress, which immediately got jumped on by everybody. And,
yes,
post-traumatic stress is when you've gone through a trauma that
yes,
really shook your equilibrium up and has a way of raising its head now and again and triggering those same feelings. That doesn't mean you're back there, but you feel like you are. And a veteran or soldier that's constantly repeating, going back out and think that is just going to be solidified more, and they have to learn how to manage that. But the family also have to learn what the triggers are and how to
for
redirect it and what
sure.
to do to manage that. But that doesn't mean that everybody else doesn't have their own level of it. And we like to downplay it, but we need to actually just respect that perhaps post-traumatic stress are boundaries,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like, I can't go there, or I don't want you to come here. This is the boundary because I can't take any more than that.
Very true. Very true. And to have those in place and to have that communication so that you can talk about when you've had enough or, hey, we
Yeah,
need to get some help outside of
yeah,
our own.
yeah.
And knowing when to get that, to respect yourself and respect the relationship and respect each other is critical
And the
for any
fact that,
life.
yes, through life. But what you're doing, and you see these couples, as you say, one immediately parted, that was a foregone conclusion, but other people being on that road to recovery of communication, and there's hope for them to reunite. It's that's really ultimately what we're all looking for in life, isn't it? That meaningful purpose of service towards one another that makes a difference, a positive difference in the lives of others. And for now, you and Tom are on this beautiful path of helping others on this. And so, the abundance that you both get from this is so enriching, and enriching to those that get provided with it, but enriching to the two of you as well, which
For
has opened
sure.
up a whole new communication between you.
For sure. That has. It's been a
Beautiful.
blessing.
Yes. And that's the point. There's always a solution. There's
Right.
always a light, right? It's just how you're willing to go through the process and understand what you're in right now is a
Yeah.
process, a puzzle you're having to unravel. Be willing to go through it, because when you get to the other side and you find out what the purpose is, boy, oh boy, life is so very
Right.
different. So different.
It is. I love the click.
Yes, exactly. All of a sudden the orchestra is in a, ah!
Yes.
You can get up and dance.
That's right.
So it's allsecure foundation.com.
.org.
.org.
Yes.
Allsecurefoundation.org. And Virago, would you spell that?
Sure. VIRAGO.
And
So
that's
that
a
is,
.org as well?
yeah, and that is on, so if you go to allsecurefoundation.org, there is a tab specifically for Virago. So you can go there to get to us on social media platforms as well.
Please communicate. If you've got some solutions, please reach out to them. If you feel that this is something that you want to do, get on their list, because they are full and they're already taken for next year. And maybe even just let you know what it is they're dealing with, because you have a community
Absolutely.
there that can reach out to them. And the biggest thing I think for them to all know is they are not alone.
Not at all. We're here. No one left behind.
Right. And all secure. That's what we want to hear. We're all secure
We're
here.
all secure.
So allsecurefoundation.org, reach out. And please go back and listen to these other shows. I promise you, there's just so much information for you there that can already shift your perspective. And, my respect and gratitude for the journey that you've both taken, and in
Thank you.
helping out the spouses. And I'm looking forward to hearing the wonderful ripple effect that is going to go out with this, because it affects everyone, not just the military spouses, but everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Until next time, folks, remember, doesn't matter what you're in, what difficulty you're in, if you take a breath, willing to step out of the anxiety and look at what possible solutions are there, the willingness to go through in seeking them, you will always find the answer. So until next time, bye for now.
We hope that you enjoyed the show. To find many more shows of inspiration, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com podcasts, and you will see an array of shows to choose from. Please do visit our www.discoveringcommunities.org and see what else that we have in store for you. Do enjoy our next show.